back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft podcast. My name is Bruce Wilkinson. Thanks for downloading and listening. Joining me again in the booth is the man primarily made of moss, Nathan Mossman. How are you, sir?
I want to start with a story today, Bruce.
Oh, I like story time.
A story about a guy named Tommy. Tommy used to work on the docks. Union went on strike. He was down on his luck for a while, but it's okay because he became a fireman, joined the New Zealand Fire Service. Now, Tommy he's a very keen fantasy rugby draft player, like we all are. And Tommy had a problem this week. So he had Glenn Fisiati in his team. He was relying on him. And when he saw the Chiefs team so he had a problem there. He was hoping that Fisiati would get named in the team. Now, yesterday, there was a fire at a school. Tommy was called out to that fire. Rescued a whole...
Brave man, Tommy.
Whole class of school children. He's a very brave man. And unfortunately, while he was out doing that, the Chiefs team was named. Glenn Fisiati's not in there. Tony Pulu was named in that team. Now, Tony Pulu would have been a welcome addition to Tommy's team. So my question to you is, why do you hate Tommy? Why do you spit on the institution of the New Zealand Fire Service? And why do you want to watch school children burn?
It is a good question. It's a very good question. I'm actually pro-fireman. I'm not sure if you've seen my stance. I like the idea of folks fighting fires. It's one of those hard luck stories, you're right. Perhaps he needs to go back working on the docks.
Well, I just think there's probably something there that we can look at about... I don't know, because the team naming Thursday is obviously, it's a key day for free agency.
I know.
And we lose some of that. So what we get is the people that are quickest to see the news sometimes pick up players, and I'm not convinced that, I understand that you want people that are on the ball to have an advantage, but at the same time, especially perhaps if you're a South African and you're playing in a league with a lot of New Zealanders, I mean, you're missing out on, a massive amount of opportunities to pick up players just for the mere fact that you have to sleep. Now, are you suggesting that South Africans should not sleep? Because that's it's going to be another position that you'll find difficult to adopt, I would have thought.
Well, it's one or t'other, right? So either we're sleeping on this side of the world, Australia and New Zealand, and we miss out on, say, the Cheetahs and Kings and Bulls and Stormers teams, or the opposite. And I think, you're right. It is first in around that time on Thursday. And we only have a bench at the moment of 6 players. So, in a lot of other fantasy games that you play, you need to be. It's not just being reactive. You need to be quite managerial, I guess, and see these changes coming. But Tony Pulu is a bit of a difficult one.
I agree with all that. I guess I'm just thinking a bit longer term. I guess if we had game lock instead of game week lock, which is something we've talked about, I think that would be a good thing. And
that is coming in, absolutely. Yeah,
and then I also think something, perhaps not an everyday, although it could be an everyday waiver wire, so that you at least get 24 hours to look at a player before he's snapped up, rather than just being the quickest on the draw, because not everybody, I mean, it's okay for you. You're sitting in fantasy rugby draft headquarters, which is either a hollowed out volcano on Rangitoto Island is one thing I've heard, or the other thing I've heard is actually that you just have a desk in the NRL bunker in Sydney.
And you just going back to the screen.
I'll be keeping an eye out for that on the weekend when they go to the bunker. I just see you sitting there in the corner.
Stroking a white cat.
Stroking a white cat, exactly.
Yeah, nice.
All right.
Oh no, look, that's all put in the suggestion box. It's lodged away. You're not the first person that's actually mentioned that. And we have sat in a round table trying to figure out how to combat that. We'll come up with an answer. We're recording this on Friday morning. We try and get it our way Thursday night, but forces against us last night. So we're doing this on Friday morning. Should get out mid-morning New Zealand time. We're going to discuss team naming Thursday, as Mossman alluded to. Buy Hard 2 this week. We're going to look at some recommendations for Game Week 6, and we'll also look back to Game Week 5 and just discuss a few of the top managers, the top scores, and the top leagues, because we didn't get to that on Monday being Easter. But question for you, Nathan. What's worse, the fantasy rugby draft manager who doesn't log in all season, or someone that logs in only twice a season to pick up players and set their lineup, and each time it plays against you?
I have an alternative scenario actually where I had a guy, I've been trying to encourage people in the league to stay active, so I'll text them and say, hey, look, you've got a couple of guys on your bench that aren't playing, you might want to think about picking this guy up. And quite often they seem to ignore me. But I did have one week where I poked one person and say, hey, look at your team, you need to pick up this guy. He did it and then beat me. And then the rest of the time he's not doing anything.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I personally, if someone logs off all season, that's fine. I think you leave their team as it is and everyone's in the same boat, right? And invariably this happens in a lot of leagues, is that someone either loses interest, gets hit by a bus, or something happens, the world collide, and they just can't, they're not playing anymore. So I actually don't mind. Well, it's frustrating, sure, but the concept that everybody plays the same team and whether it's an injury or not, you're not manipulating a lineup based on injuries or anything like that, or suspensions. So everyone has the same luck, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But the person who logs in just once or twice a season, I find is more frustrating. But yeah, and
I definitely agree with all that. And I guess the other thing is that with those managers who perhaps aren't there all season, I also kind of don't agree with trying to trade with those people, because I see a lot of people who just look at their team and go, oh, I'd love to have that player.
Yeah. And
it'll just hit them up for offering them basically nothing. And some people will just do it because they're just like, oh, okay, well, I'll click the button. I don't know what that means really. That frustrates me as well. I'm almost like saying these guys are off limits. Just don't bother interacting with them.
No, and that's the next level. So that's the worst type of manager, the one that only logs in to accept trades that they know nothing what they're doing. Yeah, that's terrible. And look, we've been in plenty of leagues together. We're in lots of different leagues, different formats, different sports. Don't be too quick to set on the 10 players in your league or the 10 managers in your league. You'll find that there are managers that are quite a light touch, shall we say, and some that are just asleep at the wheel. And each year you need to be, or the commissioner needs to be quite brutal around who they invite back for the next league, for next year. And if you find a manager is asleep at the wheel, and usually with us, they get a bit of a verbal warning. And then if they do it for 2 seasons in a row, we fill up their spot with someone else, because there is nothing worse than a sporadic manager or one that doesn't actually log in at all. Okay, a few news during the week that came through. The biggest one is probably Warwick Hallant, out for, is it 6 weeks, Mossman? Is that what it was?
Yeah, originally I thought it was up to 6 weeks, but then they're saying at least 6 weeks. It
right.
Depends a little bit where you read it. So, yep, okay. I guess 6 weeks.
So with the fantasy gods it taketh away, it giveth, with Jesse Creel going to 15. So we'll touch on a little bit of that in the Bulls, and we've got plenty of questions around start sit for Jesse Creel. Cordero's managed to wrap his car around a tree by the sounds of it in Argentina, celebrating the loss against the Stormers. I believe he was at a family event. It was just cuts and scrapes, but he was originally going to be playing the Blues, and he wasn't part of that Jaguares resting rotation, but now he is. I believe he's going to be back in New Zealand for the Crusaders game in 2 weeks' time, but let's see. He wasn't actually hurt, or at least that's the official line coming out of it. The next bit of news that we heard was Damien Delende back. So he's going to be back, certainly in contention for selection. Quite what that means with Robbie Fleck and how they're going to ease him back in, I'm not too sure, but good news for all, Mossman.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, great news for people that had held on to him for a while. I suppose in some ways even better news for people who just happened to catch this and managed to snap him up, which did happen. And I want to go back to a slightly different rant. It's a slightly different rant. This one is, I was actually, like I said, I'd like to help out the guys that are...
You're in a laboratory curing cancer?
Yeah. I'd like to help out the guys that are in the bottom part of the league, just to try and keep things competitive. And so I did point out to one of the guys, hey, Valu is probably going to be back in the next couple of weeks. You might want to make him, your top waiver wire ad.
I think I know where this is going, but carry on. Yep.
Which he did. And then one of the other guys who's one of the top players just snuck it and took Damien Delende.
Right.
It just, I just thought, well, it would have been nice if one of the perhaps guys down the bottom could have got that boost.
Yep.
But
I know what you mean.
He knows who he is. He's going. Anyway.
I'm not sure if people have forgotten how good Damien Delende is or not, but I've seen some interesting trades for him so far, and maybe it's just the fact that he hasn't played yet and it's bird in the hand, but my favourite trade that I've been... So I was trying to upgrade my outside backs, and then I got a bit of a counter with so Cordero and Delende for Dane Haylett-Petty and Jan Serfontein. So they shall remain nameless, but you know who you are. So effectively downgrading Cordero to Dane Haylett-Petty, in my mind anyway, and then massively from Delende to Serfontein.
Yeah. No, I mean, I had somebody try and trade Delende away from me in a team where I'd held on to him all this time, and their argument was he hasn't scored any points this season.
Sorry.
And I did say, well, it's quite difficult to score points from the physio table.
Yeah, that's right. It's like downgrading from an Aston Martin to Martin Ashford. Home and away fans out there know what I'm talking about.
And I'm just chuckling along just to not make it look like an idiot.
Yeah, that's right. It works well. Okay, let's bounce into quiz time. Top 5 free agent ads this week. Who do you think they might be? And I'll give you a little tip. This helps you with put the training wheels on a little bit. 3 out of the top 4 are playing in the same game this weekend.
I'm actually wondering whether it is Kings Sunwolves.
That's right.
It is the game. Okay.
Yep. So 4 out of the 6 is actually in the same game.
All right. Louis Fouché.
Number 6.
Must be 1. Yamada.
Number 1.
Is it Viljoen? Is he in there?
No, he's actually fairly well owned, Viljoen.
Okay.
He's just not very well started.
It's not the front row, is it? King's front row?
No, it isn't actually. No.
People haven't been listening to you. Okay.
Yeah, it is on the list, but not in the top 6.
It's not Duratalo.
It is number 2.
Interesting. Okay. And Tusi PC.
That's right, number 4. Yep.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And third is Jed Holloway. So good to see people still ploughing that because he. Actually, let's get on to that. Who's your number 1 lock in the game at the moment?
I think I'd stick with Etzebeth.
Would you?
I think so. Just
because you're scared of him?
Yeah, and I think he's just definitely nailed on for that spot.
Sure.
So if we're looking over the course of the season,
yeah, gotcha.
No doubt while Etzebeth fit that he's going to be playing. Mm-hmm. There are some doubts about Holloway, and I think, those things are probably perhaps just a little bit more important than Holloway's, I guess, better role.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think I'm happy to put Jed as my number 1 over those guys, and then just battle away if it turns out he's not starting, and take the drop off when Etzebeth to a Loaki Moli or Jimmy Tupou or something like that. You know.
Sure. No, I can understand that.
And who might be the top 5 cuts this week? Your deliberate pause is actually working quite well for people at home too, while they're listening to come up with their own.
Oh, I thought you were editing that out. It made it sound like I knew what I was talking about.
I'm actually adding time in there.
And then a countdown clock.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
These are tough. These are real tough. You might get 1 out of the 5. It's injury related.
I'm just trying to think who was one of the big injuries from last week.
He's been injured for a while, but as per the protocol in Super Rugby journalism, we don't find out until 3 weeks after it's actually happened that he's out till June.
Jono Lance?
That's right, number 2.
All right, okay.
Yep. So number 1 is Daniel Dupree. They're all Sharks. Daniel Dupree, Jono Lance, Odna Iningani, Peter Steph-Troy, and then Ryan Tongia for the Highlanders. So 3 out of the 5 are Sharks players.
They are kind of random, those ones, actually.
Yeah, I know, they were tough. Jono Lance was the one you're really going to actually have a shot at. All right, let's get into team naming Thursday.
And boom goes the dynamite.
Highlanders force. Elliot Dixon promoted back to the starting lineup, and Matt Faddes comes in on the right wing for Tongia. Obviously recovered from his hamstring.
Jack Wilson.
Sorry, it was Jack Wilson, wasn't it? Yeah, that's right. And Luke Morahan comes in. We didn't get any news about why Luke was out, have we?
No, got nothing at all.
No, that's a strange one. And Peter Grant obviously takes that 10 spot. We haven't had anything official around Jono Lance and his time out, but someone did, I think it might have been a friend of the podcast, Justin Pivus, he sent me a screenshot of his Twitter. He was having a chat to a few guys on Twitter, and he said that he was probably out until hopefully for June. So I know I owned Jono Lance in a number of my leagues and had him sitting on my bench as my backup fly half all this time. When he was injured, I've cut bait now. Now, that's, again, just to put a wee asterisk on that, that's nothing official yet. That's just chatter, shall we say. So use that information as what you will, but don't take it as gospel. Looking at this game itself, though, so Faddes or Morahan, which one would you start?
I think I'll stick with Faddes.
Mm-hmm.
You were hoping for something more. Some analysis? I mean, come on. Why start now?
No, that's fair. No, I lean towards Faddes as well. I haven't even heard what injury Luke Morahan had, so I don't know if it's something that's liable to flare up during the game or not, but I'm not sure. You know, the Highlanders are playing good footy at the moment, and that, to me, looks very close to their top team. Obviously, Naholo out, but they're certainly looking at the loose forwards. Maybe Christie forces his way in there, but apart from that, that looks like a pretty decent team.
Yep.
Okay, so back onto the outside backs again. Would you take? So you said Faddes over Morahan. What about Johnny McNichol over Faddes?
I actually think I'll stick with Faddes.
Okay. Joe Tamane or Faddes playing the Chiefs?
Tamani.
Okay. Rieko Ioane or Tamani?
Got a good feeling about Rieko this week.
Do you, Uncle Rieko?
Yeah.
Do you think folks know why we call it Uncle Rieko?
I don't know why we call him that.
Oh, okay. All right, well, that's probably an answer. Those who don't need to look up and watch Napoleon Dynamite. Great movie. Great
okay.
movie.
Yeah, I love that movie. I've seen it multiple times. I just did not get up. Is this the guy that could throw the pigskin a quarter mile?
That's right. That's the one. Yeah, throw it over the hills if he wanted to. Yep.
Love it.
Yep. Okay, so you've gone Uncle Rieko there. What about Robbie Coleman or Uncle Rieko?
Yeah, I'm not sure there was a lot of logic or consistency behind those choices I just made.
No, I think I'm fair. I don't mind that. I think Rieko, you only should go okay. The Jaguars game's going to be interesting. Well, we'll get into a little bit of that. But
so how about if I ranked them?
Yep.
I guess I would go Rieko, Faddes, McNichol, Morahan, Coleman.
Okay, so Coleman's right down there.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Yep. I might twist it around a little bit. I'm a little bit higher on McNichol.
I might actually swap Coleman and Morahan, to be fair.
Okay. All right. Okay, no, that works. Okay, who do you... Elliot Dixon, obviously a solid play this week. He's actually fairly lowly started, but I suspect that'll increase because he wasn't playing last week, and folks are just adjusting to it on Friday morning.
I think his benching's probably just antagonised him. I'm sure he'll come out and have a big one.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. There's a lot of talk about him being an all-black frame as well.
There is, yep.
So it's good news for the GC Mouldy. Okay, Lions Crusaders. So we haven't actually heard yet whether Yankees is going to be playing, right? So he was bracketed with Manit Boshoff when the team was announced on Tuesday night.
That's right.
And yeah, we haven't had any further information. It's a bit of a nightmare scenario, but the game is on Friday afternoon or Friday evening in South Africa. So I suspect we should hear some news before Gameweek lock.
Gut feeling is that he'll play.
It is to me too. I think they see this as a pretty important game. For the Crusaders, fairly settled, certainly with the back line. Jimmy Tupou comes in a blindside for Jordan Taufua, and Sam Whitelock drops to the bench as well. I think this has a lot to do with not wanting to put kilometres on those two guys' clock at altitude. I think you'll see them at some point, but clearly this is not a a selection that is going to be a consistent one. This is just a spot fix for these guys. What do you expect from this game, Lions Crusaders? How do you expect the game flow?
Lions at home, generally pretty keen to have a crack, aren't they?
They are. Yep.
They might look at this coming off, I guess, a pretty physical game last week, the Crusaders, with the week off. I think they'd probably look to try and pick up the pace. Yeah,
so I like to, when I look across at these games, I like to put like a little a plus or a minus beside each of the teams. So that if I'm looking at any players that I just give them a little uptick or a little downtick depending on where the game flow, what the weather forecast might be, those types of things. Team selections, all of these little things. And I've given these two a little plus because I do agree that at late afternoon game in South Africa, Lions Crusaders, I think this has got points written on it. Friend in the podcast, Justin Pivus, wants to know. He's got a selection, Daniel Lema at fly half. So does he go King Louis or King Richie?
I get the impression that King Richie could easily be demoted to a Duke or lower if he was to come out and miss a couple of kicks early on. There has been some talk in the press. I think he was Black Todater was, I think, asked the question directly, is Moala going to be dropped? Mm-hmm. Moala. He's probably
dropped all the way back to North Harbour Stadium.
He's probably like, well, Tana has been on the phone asking me questions, and clearly I've been doing what I can to put him wrong. So yes, I have asked him to drop Moala, and he did. So it's really working in his favour. But Moanga,
from Black
yeah, exactly. So, but with Moanga, it's the question has been mooted really about how close he is to being sat, and I guess if you think about it in that perspective, there is a chance that he could either give up the kicking duties or exit this game depending on how things are going. So I think Fushira is actually a pretty good start this week.
I think he is too. I probably would still go Richie. Only because they don't have Marty McKenzie on the bench and he's not on tour. If it was Marty McKenzie over and not Ben Vola, who scares the bejesus out of me. I'm not sure if I've voiced this opinion before, but anyone who's sat beside me watching the game has seen my head go and my hands are numbering anytime he takes the ball. But I'm a little bit more confident. But that said, King Louis is a really good start this week against the Sunwolves at home, Port Elizabeth.
Probably should have been King Richard anyway, shouldn't it?
Yeah, King Richard, sorry. Brozzy was...
King Louis, King Richard. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. For the record, I'll probably still stick with my Crusader bias with my one patch on.
Yeah, I mean, I find it quite difficult to split them, actually.
So do I.
I'm sort of, I guess as much as anything else, looking for reasons to not go for Moanga.
Yeah. And we've seen that playing the matchups in Fantasy Rugby Draft is a little bit more important than perhaps other games. The week-to-week nature of some of these oppositions that you come up with, but I think there's a lot of. I think this is when I shut my eyes and think of Lions Crusaders, I just see them running around with the ball, not a hell of a lot of kicking.
It's hard not to see that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anything more from this match? Jimmy Tupou, what do you think?
Oh, love it. Yeah, love it. Any time he gets a shot, playing on the flank seems to go well, so expect more of the same.
So it's interesting looking at the locks and look at the player hub to see, exactly where they all sit. And Jimmy Tupou is actually the number 5 lock, which is quite incredible.
Because he would have done it on not many performances, I guess.
Yeah, I think he's once he plays on the blind side again, he's a different type of player than Jordan Tuffill. Jordan Tuffill is very much a follow me, follow my league. If the Crusaders are getting quite flat, which happens quite frequently, he grabs that ball and he's all action and he's trying to cheese them up. And whereas Jimmy Tupou just carts the ball and he's got good hands and offloads. Okay, Blues Jaguars, as expected, a lot of the Jaguares players were rested. There's a couple that we were a bit surprised with in the Blues as well. So Nick Mayhew comes in for Tangafasi and And then Rene Ranger comes back into the midfield. Uncle Rieko on the wing. And the biggest talking point, and you touched on it with Black Todetta picking up the phone, was Piers Francis coming in for George Moala. Tough week for midfielders, Mossman.
Yeah. Blackadder are a big fan of Piers Francis though, so obviously was happy to insert him straight into the lineup. Yeah, it is. It's an interesting one. There's a few guys, a few that we wouldn't have expected. I mean, anybody that owned Moala would be, I guess, pretty shocked to see this. And it's not like it seems based on anything Moala's done particularly. I mean, he's actually been alright.
Yeah, I read an article somewhere that's saying his defensive fragility against the Reds has cost him his place. Again, that could well have just been the journalist writing it, but I didn't actually watch that game. I only saw the highlights, so I didn't think he was that bad. I don't remember Samu Karevi running through him all the time.
Mm.
How much of a down tick do you give the Blues front row with Tangafasi on the bench? I mean, there's obviously still got Chaz Faumuina and his dancing feet.
Not a whole lot, I guess. No, because it is based largely on Faumuina. I think in a home game in this kind of contest, I think they'll still be fine.
Yeah. So, what's going on with Akira Ioane? I mean, I don't understand it. I think you might have expressed some disbelief last week, just saying, Tana, come on, what the hell? More of the same?
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
I just straight up don't get it. And I don't know whether it's because Luatua's a more senior member of the team, or perhaps he's part of a leadership group or something, or they're just mates. I don't know what it is. But, I mean, you can't honestly tell me that Stephen Luatua is a better option at number 8 than Akira Ioane.
And an extension from that, Joe Edwards on the blind side. I'd still play Akira there. This has to be something more, right? This must be a message or a Julian Severe situation or something, right?
I guess it's got to be something. I mean, it's not just about pure ability. I don't know whether it's something to do with, just trying to think of other things, line out options. Perhaps Ioane's just not.
Do you think he has trouble pronouncing his name?
Well, he managed to sort out his brother.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe you watch Napoleon Dynamite. I don't get it, and what I also don't get is the lack of coverage of why this is happening in New Zealand. I mean, we had the Julian Severe saga to death. You know, Shortland Street reruns were held off, and it was the Julian Severe show for 5 nights in a row about why he wasn't playing. But we haven't seen anything about Akira Ioane.
Do you think that Akira Ioane is a less well-known name outside of fantasy rugby circles? I mean, we obviously watch him closely because we know he's devastating in terms of the game. I'm just wondering whether because we're so focused on this, perhaps that we don't see it as the rugby public sees it. I'm not saying that they don't know who he is, because I'm sure they do from the Sevens, but perhaps that's just how they see them as, he's just that Sevens guy.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If the Sevens hadn't happened, I think this probably would have gone away without a whisper in the night. But he was a big name, you know, around January and February when he was, you know, dominating the Sevens field. So he was on a lot of sports clip reels. He was on a lot of news programs. He was front page news for quite some time there. So to kind of just, I don't know. There's something there, mate. I'm not sure what it is. For the Jaguars, the loose forward trio is gone into Lasana, Rodrigo Baez and Senatore. So that's good news. I like both Baez and Lasana. Lasana certainly from last week looked really good, and Baez the first couple of weeks he looked okay, and he was carrying the ball quite significantly. He got a yellow card in that second game, so it's a bit of a sneaky start this week, because I think a lot of players will probably look at points and not really see that Baez was up there, and that's because of that yellow card, but I think he should go alright this week as well. What do you make of this backline?
I can see this being a heroic defeat for the Jaguars. In the best South American sort of revolutionary traditions. So I think they'll go fine. I think they'll score points. Mm-hmm. I think just generally this could be quite high scoring as well. Assuming the conditions are alright, and from what I understand, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, Saturday afternoon, I believe it's supposed to clear. We've had a biblical warning for late Friday afternoon when everyone's going to be on a motorway, up to about Saturday lunchtime, mid-Saturday. So it could be a little bit of a wet pitch, and we know the North Harbour Stadium isn't the flashiest pitch if you've watched the football recently.
Yeah. Well, Manuel, I'm planning on heading along down to this one.
Very nice.
Considering it. What about yourself?
No, I'm not. I would be, but we're going away this weekend for a meeting of minds. So there's three midfielders playing for the Jaguars as far as fantasy rugby draft is concerned. How do you rank them? So De La Fuente, Morahan, or Boffelli? Who would you start first? And I should point out that this week is a bit of a nightmare. The two most stressed positions in fantasy rugby draft this week are loose forward and midfielder, and especially when Moala gets benched and Tamanavalu gets benched. There's a lot of people trying to find that midfielder.
No, absolutely. I've actually looked at all three of those guys across various leagues as an option, and it's quite interesting because even just sitting here and talking about it, I hoped would clarify things in my mind. Just sitting there and staring at the names.
Certainly if you go with names, it's got to be Geronimo De La Fuente.
If this was the Melbourne Cup and I was picking, I'd like to see the colours as well.
Yeah, grey horse. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's really a tricky one. I'm thinking Boffelli just because I know despite his poor performance in the last game that he did play in, the whole playing on the wing thing, he had actually had some reasonably consistent output, like, double-digit scores. Geronimo hadn't done a whole lot until he did score that try last week. Right. And it wasn't the kind of try I think that he'll be able to score this week.
Certainly not without Nicolas Sanchez there.
Yeah. And Moroney, so I guess I'm thinking Boffelli, Geronimo, Moroney, and there's not a lot behind that.
Look, I said Boffelli as well for the main reason, even though he had that clanger last week, it was last week, I still think that it's probably him number one. I went Moroney as the next one, but I'm just splitting hairs. Just he was a bit more consistent in terms of his output, but then De La Fuente is the third on that list. So just to point on Nicolas Sanchez as well, I don't think this is anything more than just a resting as well. I'm not sure do you know much about Santiago Iglesias? And before you answer that question, I didn't know a hell of a lot, and I don't know if that's revealing too much or not, but I don't think many folks would know too much. I know Coochie Town probably have a good track on him, but we couldn't get him on the bat phone this week. But if you do type his name into Google, and this probably tells you all you need to know, you know how you get the YouTube results that say, well, here's a suggestion of a video to go and watch?
Yep.
The first four results for YouTube clips are of big tackles that he's made.
Okay.
So, and they're not the same tackle.
Right.
It's odd. Right. Very, very odd. But yes, I genuinely don't know how much of a spot play he is. I don't think folks are scratching around too much for fly half this week. I think there's a few options, so I'm not sure I would take a punt on him.
And it would be a real punt.
That's right. Yep. And you're probably going to have to cut bait with someone to shoehorn him into your team as well. And I don't think that's a good idea.
No, I mean that's just throwing a dart at the board really. And I think you'd rather stick with say a Peter Grant, where at least you know who he is, that he can score points and will probably get you something.
Two first names as well. It's always good.
Crowd pleaser, yeah.
Yep. Manuel Montero gets the first chance. What do you expect from him? Do you think this might be just part of this dastardly plan from the Jaguares all along that he was only ever going to start against the Australasian tour? He's the first choice left winger.
Right, okay. I mean, I like anybody with alliteration in their name, so to have two in the same backline is quite exciting for me.
Same letter too.
That's right, yeah. So we've got two M&Ms.
Two M&Ms, yeah, that's four.
I think it probably tells people all they need to know, the fact that the analysis we can come up with is actually looking at their names.
No, I know. Well, look, so Montero was very, very good. He's a good player, very, very good player. To me, it's a very odd that we've got this far and haven't seen him. I know there's been a little bit of injury, but for the last couple of weeks he's been fit. To me, he seems perfectly suited to a Super Rugby competition. He's fairly strong, direct runner. I think, look, I'm just a bit surprised it's taken this long to work into his lineup. Now, maybe it is to do with just it's taken some time to get there, and he's either starting or he's not. So he's not a bench player. He doesn't have the versatility of someone, say, like a Cordero or someone like that. Bevan Smith does have a question for you, though. Choose one. Coleman, DHP, Montero, or... Oh, you can scrub. Oh, no, let's let Dan Murray. So Neil Murray.
I think that's probably supposed to be SP.
Well, I wondered that as well, but then I figured, no, I'll take that off the table because SP hasn't been named, and I'll replace it with Dan.
Yeah, but I think in his original question, I'm pretty sure he meant SP.
Okay, all right.
But that's okay. We can leave D. Neil in instead. In that case, I think I'd go D. Neil first up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still inclined to stick with Haylett Petty. Don't feel great about it this week, but I think he'll still be okay. I know you've got a bit of a theory about
I do have a little bit of a theory, but it's a very small sample. So it's a real tough one, and they have played some pretty tough teams. But again, they are playing the Highlanders this week, and that's a tough matchup. And look at the Rebels at home, didn't get off the mark, or at least didn't get out of the starters blocks. So when John O'Lance has gone down, there's a quick correlation between the number of points that Dane Haylett Petty has scored. Now look, he did it without Lance last year, and he was a really good performer, but I just... 2 for 2, so he had 2 games with Lance, very well, mid-teens I think it was, and then after that, without it, not so much. So, to me, I do have a little bit of a knock on DHP this week, but you'd still put him ahead of Montero and Robbie Coleman?
I think it's pretty close.
Between Montero or Coleman?
I think between all three, actually.
Okay.
I think it's quite a difficult one. I mean, I think ultimately what's going to happen is Coleman's going to end up last on my list, which... once again makes it sound like I hate Robbie Coleman, where I don't. It's just that I don't have a strong feeling about any of these guys.
Yeah, okay.
I can understand why you might think sticking Montero in here in this game, which potentially could be quite open, would be a good idea. But at the same time, haven't seen him. I mean, God knows where his match fitness and the rest of it's up. He could be one of the first guys subbed. We do see that. They definitely get through their subs, the Jags.
Yeah, they do.
A high turnover of names.
And you touched on an interesting bit in there as well around we haven't seen him. And that you need to make your mind up what type of fantasy player you are and what type of player you're talking about. If there's really massive upside and you haven't seen him yet, then great, maybe you risk it. But you need to figure out what type of fantasy. I personally am a little bit more hesitant to thrust a player into my starting lineup if I haven't seen him this season. I'm probably going to have a little bit of a decision next week if Damien Delende has started, whether I put him straight in. But in that situation, there's significant upside, so I probably am going to put him in. But someone like Montero, I just don't know. So I would play a wait-and-see attitude with that, and I probably would go with Haylett Petty. But it is really, really close with Robbie Coleman for me too. Blair Jackson on Twitter also wants to know, would you cut any of the following for Rene Ranger? Which is interesting that how far is the great fallen, mighty fallen, right? Samu Karevi, Chaz Ngatai, Leo Zass, or Rob Thompson?
I think the answer to that is no at this point. Especially not if we're talking about cutting. I mean, if you've got, I guess here's the thing. If you've got all 4 of those midfielders, you're probably not losing a lot by dropping Rob Thompson to pick up Ranger, because you're thinking, who has the most upside? Who could potentially be the match-winning guy? And I think that's Ranger. I suppose there's probably not a lot of question about that. So if you're already covered in that position, you've got Ngatai and Zass. Well, yeah, you might as well go for the upside play, right?
I think so. I agree. And I think maybe it's a little bit late in the week to do that now, but I have quite a few midfielders, and I've stockpiled in a lot of my leagues a lot of midfielders. And I'm just starting to get to the point now where I'm trying to package up 2-for-1s. So I'm trying to package up, say, Leo Zass with a Lionel Mapo to get, say, a Charlie Ngatai or something like that. So that I can also, I free up a space for another player on my bench. but I'm upgrading at a position that I'm fairly strong at as well.
Yep, that makes sense.
Gary McRae wants to know Uncle Rieko or Montero.
I'd go Uncle.
All right, anything more from Blues Jaguares? I guess the last thing I wanted to kind of point out, that lack of news around Milani Nanai. I assume you haven't heard him. He hasn't been saving fires and saving children from fires with you, has he?
With Tommy, you mean?
Pardon me. So what did I say? You? Tommy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. And he's not coming fishing with us on Sunday either.
Oh, yeah, no, it's strange.
So I don't know what he's up to.
Okay, Brumbies Chiefs. Robbie Coleman again put on the wing. Aiden Tower at fullback.
Once again, Brumbies, the most boring team sheet.
It is, isn't it?
But no, not boring in a bad way either, just consistent. You know what you're going to get. Not a lot to say about them really. Coleman, but I guess the things we said about Coleman last week apply this week as well, right?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Still a little bit disbelief around Aiden Tower at 15, but I guess the listeners are going to be sick of me hearing about that, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be a Wallaby as well. But I think I'm just going to go into meltdown.
So, Tamani, unlucky last week, we expect him to bounce back, I guess. You talked about Cabelli, you're saying stick with him because the talent's there. I think that probably covers the guys that's sort of worthy of note.
Yeah, no, I agree. A little interesting note with Joe Powell. Not much for fantasy rugby, but Joe Powell on the bench, backup halfback. He's looked pretty good. He was good last season, good in the NRC. He's very, very promising halfback coming through. For the Chiefs, so Anton Leonard-Brown's obviously recovered from his knee injury, or his blown up knee that he was on the flight back from Argentina that he got. Tony Pulu comes into the right wing, and Talani Sau goes into lock from blindside. I guess everyone's going to want to know, first of all, what do you make of Tony Pulu?
Did see an article yesterday saying that he is the current fastest man in New Zealand rugby.
I saw that too, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing that as a fantasy manager you read that and you get a little bit excited, understandably. So I think he's, if you're looking for a number 3 outside back and you're considering, who are some of the people we've talked about? Maybe like a Montero, for instance. I might be inclined to just go for Pulu, just to see what happens here.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. And what about the other players? So you play Uncle Rieko over them?
I think Rieko would be the smarter play.
Faddes?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm worried about the matchup for Pulu. I think the talent's there, and if he's got this, I think you've got to pick him up because he's playing in the Chiefs team, and he quite possibly could get that right wing spot. Well, we've seen quite a bit of rotation so far in that spot, opposite James Lowe. I'm just a little bit worried about this particular game thrusting him straight back in.
No, I'd agree. And as a Chiefs fan, I look at this fixture with a little bit of trepidation, actually. I sort of look at it and think, how are we going to win this? Kind of got to keep it away from the Brumbies front row anyway, or the Brumbies forwards. I think, that Brumbies front row could go pretty well in this game. And the Chiefs, obviously, that's an area where we've had problems with injuries. I think it will be relying a lot on counter-attack. And I guess the flip side to that is the Brumbies might decide to not kick.
Yeah, which would be a bit odd, but let's see. We love us some Anton Leonard-Brown, so good to see him in the 13. What do you make of this, though? Do you think this is his job? Or do you think it's... I was a bit surprised if they were just rotating based on opposition that they would choose Anton Leonard-Brown for this one.
Agreed. Yeah.
I hope it's something.
I think it's starting to look like something. And it could just be another disappointing turn in the career of Tamina Farley. Because I was starting to come around to the idea, and I thought I'd, seen a few bits and pieces, but I agree. They might have just decided that Ngata and Brown go better together. I actually don't know.
No, neither do I. They're kind of similar players, Ngata and Leonard-Brown. So
they are. That's the thing. If neither of them are really block-busting in that Tamanavalu way. I would have thought if you're going up against someone like Kurandrani that perhaps Tamanavalu would... Although defence is, obviously these days, is not really about putting a big guy. It's just about finding the better defender, right? And I think
that's right.
maybe Brown probably is a better defender. The thing that's interesting about Leonard Brown is that you kind of think of him as being a smaller guy because Tamanavalu is this big guy, but he's not small.
No, he's not. I totally agree. Player on the bench that we saw injured a few weeks ago, good to see back, Sean Stevenson.
They obviously like him a lot.
They do, don't they?
Because he's straight back in there, and obviously no sign of the Fish and no sign of McNichol.
That's right.
It sounds like Stevenson's a guy that they rate pretty highly, and it may have been that he may have got the start in this ahead of Pulu if he'd been match fit.
Yeah, that's right. I think so. It looks like the Fish's injured, or at least it wasn't explained in the press release. It just said unavailable for selection was the Fish, but yeah, no mention of Sam McNichol. So I think, as you say, and it probably would have made more sense if they did like McNichol to put him there because he's a little bit more versatile with potentially coming into the further into the back line as well. But no, they obviously like Sean Stevenson. Good to see. Anything more from this game? Brad Weber, TKB out again. You don't know how long that is, do you?
No idea, because I thought it was... Originally I thought it was a suspension, but it's not, is it? He got off that charge.
No, he got off that charge.
Yeah, right, okay. No, this is... I hesitate to say Brad Weber's job.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah, you don't really know with Rennie, do you?
No.
Okay, question from Ian Struzner. I definitely butchered that, but bench one of these players, DHP, Mapo or Coleman. I think we've probably answered that, haven't we?
Yeah, kind of. So what was your answer?
Coleman.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
LaRue Vuillon, Kurandrani, Anton Leonard-Brown or Berger Ardendale with the match up against the Cheetahs?
I'm not crazy about Berger. Well, just the player, not the food. Just clear that up. I have a sneaky suspicion it could be Leonard Brown, but at the same time, I think I'm leaning towards Kurandrani.
So I said Tavita is a banker, but if the rest of your team is fairly solid, then have a run at Anton Leonard-Brown because he's probably he looks the goods.
Yep.
Actually, we had a couple of trades. I had a trade. I just wanted to run them past you as well and just get your take on it. So, in the podcast, Richard Gordon, we were talking about Lionel Mapo and Rob Thompson for Charlie Ngatai, or Willie LaRue and Leo Zass for Charlie Ngatai. And his outside backs are Jesse Creel, D. Neal, Murray, and Jet Li. Would you take any of them for Charlie Ngatai?
I think LaRue and Zass would...
Yeah, that's the one he's thinking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Let me just think about that, right?
What do you think about the...
No, I actually think I would do that.
What about... are you worried at all about any sort of resting with Chaz Ngatai? We haven't seen it yet, but a lot of the other Chiefs players have been rotated out, and I just wonder if there's going to come a point in time where Anton Leonard-Brown shifts in 12 for a couple of games.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. I think it's likely that he might miss the odd game, but you can't factor that in too much.
No, you can't.
Thinking.
No, I agree. No, I just... Yeah, and clearly he's the number one player, number one midfielder, and he's number one at distance at the moment.
No, I think the LaRue and Zass, because I'm pretty high on Zass as well, so I think that's probably not a bad option.
What about Delende for Chaz? This week?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd do that. Yeah, would I? Oh, that's another close one.
It is, isn't it? I like different layers of complexity in trades.
Yeah.
There's a lot to factor in about Delende. Does he come straight into that position? Does it take him a little bit of time to knock off the rust?
Yeah, what kind of shape he's in.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Length of the beard, have got the designer stubble.
Yeah. If the Chiefs had a bye yet, I don't think they have. So there's a game that Ngatai would miss.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps looking at the rest of the fixtures though.
It's close though, right?
Yeah, it's very close.
Okay. Anything more from this game? Should be a belter.
Should be. Yeah.
Kings Sunwolves then. So they've been named overnight. It's a little bit of a surprise in the Kings team for me anyway that Chris Cloete was named on the bench, but they've gone with CJ Villeman and Stefan Villemin. And in the wings, Savinda Gray has come in. I guess first of all, what do you make of this game, Kings Sunwolves on Port Elizabeth? What are you expecting?
I'm expecting not much defence.
Sure.
I think this is. Well, here's the flip side to this. If this is the relegation 6-pointer, is it going to get tight? I guess
that's right. That's the only thing nagging in the back of my mind.
Yeah. I guess I don't. Perhaps I know. I mean, realistically, I don't know if these teams have another way to play.
No, that's right. They don't.
I just think there's only one gear. I think, and the Kings at home, they'll probably just go hell for leather in front of a crowd that would turn up sort of expecting a win. That'll drive them on.
Yep.
And the Sunwolves will do their thing, and I'm sure that there'll be plenty of open spaces.
Yeah, the managers are going to find themselves in a bit of a strange place this week with an extraordinary number of Moondogs and Kings players in their starting lineups all of a sudden.
And I guess the thing is with that is to not go too crazy because you've got to think about the weeks ahead. So don't just start dropping guys and look at this matchup and go, yeah, this is going to be awesome. And then next week find yourself with a whole bunch of Kings players in your team that you can't use.
That's right. You need to be clever about it. So if you've got a backup loose forward that you can cut, or if you're carrying an extra midfielder that's not playing, then great. But yeah, I wouldn't just flood your team of Sunwolves and Kings players as well. Not much change for the Sunwolves. Loaki Moli switches back to the blind side from lock, and Tim Bond stays at lock. Question here: Seta Tamanavalu, George Moala, Vatamaya, or Tatakawa?
I've seen two of those guys aren't starting.
That's the question, though.
Would you take one of these other guys off the bench?
That's right.
You think Moala might go beast mode when he gets on?
That's the one player I wouldn't say Tamanavalu would.
No.
I would lean towards Moala, but it's really Moala, Vatamaya, or Tatakawa.
Yeah, there is that question, isn't it? Like 30 minutes of angry Moala.
Yeah. And his terrible defence.
It's the kind of thing that winds up in a legal case. Tatakawa's been sort of sneaky good, hasn't he?
He has. I went Tatakawa. And the question for me then was whether it's Moala or Vatamaya.
What about Tatakawa versus perhaps those Jags players that we mentioned?
Yeah, so that's a question from actually, it's the next question. So Tom Hiscott, he asked us that. Ben Tapawai, Tatakawa, or any Jags midfielders?
Oh, that's great. So he's asking me that question. I'll ask you.
So we'll rewind that and we'll redact it. And so we'll come from a position of strength.
Yeah.
I think the first question is Tatakawa, and I probably would still go Vatamaya, because he has looked fairly good, and he's fairly involved in the Kings, and as he's pointed out, I think there will be defence optional in that match at Port Elizabeth. So on to Tom's question: Tapawai, Benny Taps, Tatakawa, or any of the Jags midfielders?
So I guess we're kind of thinking Tatakawa. Then Buffelli was the other one we liked, so if we just keep him in there. Yeah. I'm not actually anti-Force. I do think that they'll go better at home, and they haven't been terrible away, but they've just faded in the last 20 minutes of games, so that I'm sure they'll put up a reasonable kind of performance. Whether that will translate to points for Tapawai, I mean, it's difficult to say. So I guess I'd say Tatakawa and then Buffelli.
Yep, no, Parker Carr's in the same garage. I said the same thing. Warwick Austin got in touch with us, though, and he did us a little bit of a solid. So from now on, Edgar Maratuli, the hooker, apparently his nickname is the Toolbox by some of his teammates, ex-teammates at the Leopards. So I can pronounce Toolbox a lot easier. So we're going to go with that from here on forward. But any guesses as to what the Toolbox could be referring to?
I'm not sure I can really speculate on that on a family show.
Indeed.
But I love the nickname. Yeah.
It's a good nickname, isn't it? I haven't heard that as a nickname before, the toolbox.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah, I've heard Swiss Army and a few of those, but I haven't heard the toolbox. It's good. Anything more from this game?
No.
All right. Bulls Cheetahs. So we touched on it at the top of the hour. Jesse Creel to 15. You expect big things from him?
I do, actually. Yep. Thought he's looked okay in the brief glimpses we've had since his comeback. So this should be good for him, I think. Yep. Yeah,
absolutely. And Bjorn Basong injured. Travis Ismail come onto the right wing. Jamba Ulengo on the left wing still, and Tian Schoeman keeps the fly half duties. Jan Serfontein and Berger Oldendal. Which one of those would you start if you had to?
I'd say Serfontein, but I don't feel really good about either of them. Obviously, perhaps Serfontein just perhaps because he's in a slightly wider position. Strikes me as maybe the more open player. I honestly don't know. Yeah, no,
it's a tough one, that one. Hopefully a decision you don't have to make. A player that not necessarily for fantasy rugby, but I quite liked was Roloff Smith. Not your average South African fetcher. Looked really good. It'll be interesting to see whether that starts to get into the turnovers a bit more. Lapis Labuschagne on the bench as well, which is good to see him coming back. For the Cheetahs, they've been decimated in midfield with William Small-Smith out, and then there was someone else picked up an injury. They're back up 12. They've got Nico Lee coming in. He will be in the database sometime soon. We just got an update through from Opta. Bit of a rumour about Diaga heading to the Bulls. I don't know if this is just one of those Alex Ferguson situations where we're playing Arsenal this week, so we'll talk about, we're definitely not interested in Thierry Henry, that type of thing. But yeah, from a fantasy perspective, we've had questions from Jurgens to Blanche, Ulengo or DHP, and he's got DMAC and Jesse Creel as his other two outside backs.
In that case, it's a question of whether you're doubling down on the Bulls, and perhaps you don't. I think the wider question here is what we think about this matchup, because I've seen a few comments about love the Bulls matchup against the Cheetahs, etc., etc. I mean, is it really going to be as one-sided as what we think? I mean, or what some people are thinking? Because often, as we've discussed previously, these derby matches are tighter than what you think as well.
I think they'll be closer. I don't think it's going to be one-sided, but I don't think it's going to be tight scrummaging battle, if you know what I mean.
Right.
I think there'll be points, and I think the Cheetahs will be playing their part. But I think as I said before, I give both plus on both of these. But you're obviously a little bit more pumping the brakes.
A little bit. I'm not sort of giving this one a massive uptick, I guess is what I'm saying.
Sure. All that's ringing in my head is Bulls Rebels. That game just keeps ringing in my head as a 50-26 or something. And I know this isn't going to happen for this one, but that's probably masking my view on what I think a Bulls game at home against an okay position a team would be.
Right. I'm actually going to go with DHP. I'm going to keep the faith.
Oh, yeah. I actually said you should just keep the spot blank and you should showboat with DMAC.
Pretty much good based on this season.
Yeah, that's right. It's crazy. I went Ulengo. I think I'm a little bit higher on most than Ulengo this week. I like what I've seen from him. And I thought if you've got DMAC, Jesse Creel and Ulengo, you only really need one of them to hit and you've got enough out of your outside backs. I think there's such an uptick there. But totally understand the Dane Hallett-Petty because the other two are fairly strong plays and liable to get you a lot of points. And it is, depending if you did want to diversify in that outside back and not have too much invested in the back three of the Bulls. Owl Jones has a cracker. Biohard 2 is obviously bitten and hard. Matt Faddes, Aiden Toa, Raymond Rule or Moyano, who we didn't even talk about in the Jaguars, who's playing 15.
I think I go Faddes, Maniano, Toa, Rule. And I'm just wondering whether with the Manjano thing, whether the Blues might notice what the Stormers did last week and actually try and kick the ball down to them in their own half and watch them try and run it out. And that might result in Manjano getting a few carries back.
Yeah, you wonder that if you've got if your fly half has got a tackling highlight reel, then potentially he does kick a little bit more than Sanchez.
If you just think about the way these games could potentially go, that there's that scenario that I've just mentioned, and then in Chiefs Brumbies, the Chiefs are probably less likely to want to give possession back to the Brumbies, perhaps. So they might be inclined to run it back from the back more than, say, putting it down to Toa.
Yeah, no.
Or alternatively, they might just think, well, let's just kick it to Toa and watch him, make 5 meters of ground, and we'll take the line out.
And then abuse the AR. Gesture further up the field. Anything more from this match?
No, I think a lot of it is going to come down to what kind of matchup it is, and there'll be some varying opinions on it. So people out there, you make your own mind up about how you think it'll go, and I think that'll sort of guide your selections.
I think so too. Obviously we haven't talked about Sargel Peterson, Clayton Bummenkeys. I think they're good plays this week. D. Neal's decent as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on to... So we don't have team news for Waratah's Rebels, but we talked off air about this as well. There's some interesting questions that will be answered when the teams come out. Now, from a formalities perspective, they have to name their team 48 hours before the kickoff, and I know that at 6 o'clock New Zealand time is 6 o'clock Sunday is the Waratahs Rebels game. So you should hear by about lunchtime, I would have thought, but the latest you can hear is by 6 o'clock on tonight on the Gameweek clock. So you're going to have to be fairly reactive. The big question mark, well, there's a couple of question marks, I guess, but the main question mark we've been reading a little bit more about is Kurtley Beale. So this has quite significant implications to the rest of the back line as well. Now, I don't know if it has significant implications for output in terms of Israel Folau, and we'll get onto that, but at the moment, Beale is bracketed with Matt Carraro. Beale's, I read an article from Gibbo yesterday in I think it might have been the Canberra Times or something like that, saying that he's a doubt, and he's very much a doubt, but they're going to give him a bit of time to prove his fitness. I guess let's start from the point of view of we haven't heard any news. So the worst case scenario is, for whatever reason, they flout in the face of Sanzar and don't submit their team in the 48 hours. What do you do with Kurtley Beale? Are you going to start him?
I think in a week where midfielder is so tough, I think you have to.
You'd roll the dice?
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't, but that's me. I'm a little bit more conservative with well, sorry, yeah, okay, let's qualify that. Let's go right down to Berger Rodendal and Jan Serfontein. In that case, I probably would start Kurtley Beale. Tatakawa, Boffelli, I'd probably start those guys. Where do you come down on that?
I think I'd probably agree with that, yeah.
Somewhere around there, right?
Yeah. If you're dropping further down into those Jags players, if it was Geronimo or Maroney, then I'd start to seriously consider Beale. Yeah,
and even if, to me, whether he stays bracketed or whether he's named to start, it's still the same risk to me. The other alternative is, would you put Matt Carraro in there if Matt Carraro is named today before game week clock? Over the Serfontein, Odendale, Tatakawa, Boffelli, Geronimo, Maroney?
Probably not over...
He's been pretty poor, hasn't he, so far, Carraro on the wing?
Yeah, he has, and that's even considering the whole wing thing. Yeah. So I think probably Tatakawa was probably a better option there.
Just on a little bit of a hypothetical, so it was going to be Kurtley Beale going to fullback in Israel Folau coming to 13 and trying that experiment, that much vaunted experiment. We were going to get our first viewing of that this Sunday. However, it doesn't look like that's going to prevail. But let's say we do see that. I've had a few theories popping around, and I think Bevan Smith might have said it best, is you lose your cheap run-back meters, right, from Israel Folau, but what you lose in metres, you may well gain in defenders beaten, in so much as he beats that first defender at every time. And if he gets more pill or gets his hands on the ball more frequently with say, Foley feeding him, then there's a chance of an uptick of defenders beaten. Going to centre, would you downgrade, upgrade, keep him the same?
I think you keep him the same.
Keep him the same?
Yeah.
Okay. Other question marks, I guess, around the Rebels team, right?
Yeah, the guys that came off injured last week. So Jonah Placid is one. Obviously, Reece Hodge coming on for him. There'd be a few question marks around that selection.
I'm really interested to see this Rebels team. Because I believe Placid is fit, and I believe that Allison is fit. That was the information that we got a little bit later in the week. I don't know about Tom English. They were going to get a second opinion, which never... Well, to me, I wasn't too sure how to take that, but it doesn't sound good.
You're not going to see English in this game anyway.
You're not going to see him in this game, and I don't know if you'll see him for a while. I think if you got good news, you'd run out of the doctors and start training. I think if you got bad news, then you'd ask for a second opinion. But yeah, it would be interesting to see the different where Placid goes, where Cam Crawford goes, and where Reece Hodge goes. And then, secondly, on top of that, I know you believe that Jack Debrashini is going to be kicking goals, but I have a little bit less confidence that he's going to be doing that, and potentially Reece Hodge will be. Okay, anything more from this game? Sans any team sheets?
No, until we hear those, resolve those talking points. I think there's probably not a lot else to say.
No, I love the Sunday games, but this is the negative side of it, right? That the teams aren't named till quite late. Okay, that's enough for the team naming Thursday. We didn't talk about the top managers last week, and the top league. So Alan Dallas in the Fets League, he got 213.3 points. He topped the game week. Well done, sir. The top managers are Andre Heineke, Justin Vermeulen, Peter Lyes, Ben Wiley, and Josh Bernard. And we put these all on Facebook, and we didn't put the leagues this week. But the top league again is Fants Bants. Congratulations, lads. Well done. That might be the third week in a row, if I remember rightly. The Highveld Bowl, the B&B League, Commonettas, and the Shiva Bowl rounding out number 5. Right, let's get into a couple of players that we think may do okay this week. And just for those who are tuning in for the first time, we try and grab a couple of players who are less than 50% started in most leagues, so there's a chance he's sitting on your bench. And what I might do this week, Muxman, I might get you to get someone that's fairly well started, someone that's averagely started, and a real smoky. Someone that's, say, below 10% started. And we'll go from there.
Okay, so I would think that obviously Tony Pulu is going to be less than. I mean, that's a real outside bet, but an interesting player. So
there's your real smoky. He's less than 1% owned. Less than 1% started.
Right.
So there's your smoky. Good one. It's a good starting one.
And so, how would you define kind of owned?
So kind of owned, probably 25% and below. So the 3 tiers being likely to be owned, 50 to 25, and then 25 to 10, and then 10 down. So for instance, Elliot Dixon has started in 44% of leagues.
Right. Okay.
I think he'll go well, and I think, he's the one he's probably likely started, but he is still less than that line that we draw at 50%.
So if we were talking about Bulls cheaters in a similar, having Bulls Rebels in mind, a guy who went quite well against the Rebels was Travis Ishmael, who I imagine is probably not massively owned, but did put up probably 30 or 40 points in that game. So that's probably another outside bet there. If you think Bulls cheaters is going to go that way, then there's a chance that he could actually do something.
So he's owned in 90% of leagues, which is high, but he's only started in 6.4% of leagues. So
right. Okay.
That tells you probably the disparity of them.
It does, yeah.
So yeah, that's a good one. I think that's 2 smokies I would give you. My other middle range player was Andrew Di Rotalo. I know certainly when we get to this section, I tend to lean towards outside backs for some reason or another. I seem to offer up more outside backs than I do anything else. So I'm trying to move away with that. I'm trying to move away from that just for a wee bit. And I've got 2 loose forwards, Elliot Dixon and Di Rotalo.
Okay, well, in the spirit of not going for outside backs and looking for other options, Fouché, I think, is going to be a good start this week.
Yep, that's a good one. He's only started in 8% of leagues, so you've nailed 3 smokies there. I like it. I like the balls to the wall. Rob Thompson should be all right. He's 23%. We mentioned Di Rotalo. Jed Holloway is I mean, I don't like saying Jed, but he's still only started in 44% of the leagues. But I think most people who have gotten their hands on the wheels would. Tusi, but the guy that I quite like in that middle range or that lower middle range is Jamba Ulengo at 15%. I think I'll go quite well this week. All right, a little bit of admin. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Reg Draft, at Fantasy REG Draft, or on Facebook, and that's where we put all our team news. Remember, you can put the notifications on that so that you always do see team news that we put out or injuries that we put out, so you can react quicker than anyone else in your league. It's a good wee tip from one of our users. Send us a mail on support at fantasyrugbydraft.com. Mossman's on at Nathan Mossman. It's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. He's Nathan Mossman.
Living on a prayer.
El Tio Rapido.
What a bust here by Christian Cullen. Plenty of support, and what a